Section 1 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Moon Lilith. The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. Section 1. Front Matter, Proem, The City of Dreadful Night, Parts 1 through 10. No tears of mine shall fall upon thy face. Whatever city thou hast gained at last, better it is than that where thy feet passed so many times, such weary nights and days. Those journeying feet knew all its inmost ways, where shapes and shadows of dread things were cast. There moved thy soul, profoundly dark and vast. There did thy voice its hymn of anguish raise. Thou wouldst have left that city of great night, yet travelled its dark mazes, all in vain. But one way leads from it, which, found aright, who goes by it may not return again. There didst thou grope thy way through thy long pain. Hast thou, outside, found any world of light? Philip Bourke Marston. Proem. O antique fables, beautiful and bright, and joyous with the joyous youth of yore. O antique fables, for a little light of that which shineth in you evermore, to cleanse the dimness from our weary eyes, and bathe our old world with a new surprise of golden dawn, entrancing sea and shore. We stagger under the enormous weight of all the heavy ages piled on us, with all their grievous wrongs inveterate, and all their disenchantments dolorous, and all the monstrous tasks they have bequeathed, and we are stifled with the airs they breathed, and read in theirs our dooms calamitous. Our world is all stripped naked of their dreams. No deities in sky or sun or moon, no nymphs in woods and hills and seas and streams. Mere earth and water, air and fire their boon. No God in all our universe we trace, no heaven in the infinitude of space, no life beyond death, coming not too soon. Our souls are stripped of their illusions sweet, our hopes, at best, in some far future years. For others, not ourselves, whose bleeding feet wander this rocky waste, where broken spears and bleaching bones lie scattered on the sand, who know we shall not reach the promised land. Perhaps a mirage, glistening through our tears. And if there be this promised land indeed, our children's heritage. Oh, what a prodigal waste of precious seed, of myriad lives from age to age, of woes and agonies and blank despairs through countless cycles, that some fortunate heirs may enter and conclude the pilgrimage. But if it prove a mirage after all, our last illusion leaves us wholly bare, to bruise against fate's adamantine wall, consumed or frozen in the pitiless air. In all our world, beneath, around, above, only one refuge, solace, triumph, love, sole star of light in infinite black despair. O antique fables, beautiful and bright, and joyous with the joyous youth of yore. O antique fables, for a little light of that which shineth in you evermore, to cleanse the dimness from our weary eyes, and bathe our old world with a new surprise of golden dawn entrancing sea and shore. January 1882.
Per me si va nella città dolente, Dante. Poi di tanto adoprar, di tanti moti d'ogni celeste, ogni terrena cosa, girando senza posa per tornar sempre là donde son mosse, uso alcuno, alcun frutto indovinar non so. Sola nel mondo eterna a cui si volve ogni creata cosa, in te, morte, si posa nostra ignuda natura, lieta no, ma sicura dell'antico dolor, però ch'esser beato nega ai mortali e nega a morti il fatto. Leopardi.
The City of Dreadful Night, 1870-1874. Proem. Lo, thus, as prostrate, in the dust I write, my heart's deep languor and my soul's sad tears. Yet, why evoke the spectres of black night to blot the sunshine of exultant years? Why disinter dead faith from mouldering hidden? Why break the seals of mute despair unbidden, and wail life's discords into careless ears? Because a cold rage seizes one at whiles, to show the bitter old and wrinkled truth, stripped naked of all vesture that beguiles, false dreams, false hopes, false masks, and modes of youth, because it gives some sense of power and passion in helpless impotence, to try to fashion our woe in living words, howe'er uncouth. Surely I write not for the hopeful young, or those who deem their happiness of worth, or such as pasture and grow fat among the shows of life, and feel nor doubt nor dearth, or pious spirits with a God above them to sanctify and glorify and love them, or sages who foresee a heaven on earth. For none of these I write, and none of these could read the writing if they deigned to try. So may they flourish in their due degrees on our sweet earth and in their unplaced sky. If any cares for the weak words here written, it must be someone desolate, fate-smitten, whose faith and hope are dead, and who would die. Yes, here and there some weary wanderer in that same city of tremendous night will understand the speech and feel a stir of fellowship in all disastrous fight. I suffer mute and lonely, yet another uplifts his voice to let me know a brother travels the same wild path, though out of sight. O sad fraternity! Do I unfold your dolorous mysteries shrouded from of yore? Nay, be assured, no secret can be told to any who divined it not before. None initiate by many a presage will comprehend the language of the message, although proclaimed aloud for evermore. 1. The city is of night, perchance of death, but certainly of night. For never there can come the lucid morning's fragrant breath after the dewy dawning's cold gray air. The moon and stars may shine with scorn or pity. The sun has never visited that city, for it dissolveth in the daylight fair, dissolveth like a dream of night away, though present in distempered gloom of thought and deadly weariness of heart all day. But when a dream night after night is brought throughout a week, and such weeks, few or many, recur each year for several years, can any discern that dream from real life in aught? For life is but a dream, whose shapes return, some frequently, some seldom, some by night and some by day, some night and day. We learn, the while all change, and many vanish quite in their recurrence, with recurrent changes, a certain seeming order. Where this ranges, we count things real, such as memories might. A river girds the city west and south, the main north channel of a broad lagoon, regurging with the salt tides from the mouth. Waste marshes shine and glitter to the moon. For leagues, then moorland black, then stony ridges, great piers and causeways, many noble bridges, connect the town in islet suburbs strewn. Upon an easy slope it lies at large, and scarcely overlaps the long curved crest, which swells out 2 leagues from the river marge. A trackless wilderness rolls north and west, savannas, savage woods, enormous mountains, bleak uplands, black ravines with torrent fountains, and eastward rolls the shipless sea's unrest. The city is not ruinous, although great ruins of an unremembered past, with others of a few short years ago more sad, are found within its precincts vast. The street lamps always burn, but scarce a casement in house or palace front, from room to basement, doth glow or gleam athwart the murk air cast. The street lamps burn amidst the baleful glooms, amidst the soundless solitudes immense of ranged mansions, dark and still as tombs. The silence which benumbs or strains the sense, fulfills with awe the soul's despair unweeping. Myriads of habitants are ever sleeping, or dead, or fled from nameless pestilence. Yet in some necropolis you find perchance one mourner to 1,000 dead. So there, worn faces that look deaf and blind, like tragic masks of stone, with weary tread, each wrapped in his own doom, they wander, or sit fordone and desolately ponder through sleepless hours with heavy, drooping head. Mature men chiefly, few in age or youth, a woman rarely, now and then a child. A child! If here the heart turns sick with ruth to see a little one from birth defiled, or lame or blind, as preordained to languish through youthless life, think how it bleeds with anguish to meet one erring in that homeless wild. They often murmur to themselves. They speak to one another seldom, for their woe broods maddening inwardly and scorns to wreak itself abroad. And if at whiles it grow to frenzy which must rave, none heeds the clamor, unless there waits some victim of like glamour to rave in turn, who lends attentive show. The city is of night, but not of sleep. Their sweet sleep is not for the weary brain. The pitiless hours like years and ages creep. A night seems termless hell. This dreadful strain of thought and consciousness which never ceases, of which some moments stupor but increases, this, worse than woe, makes wretches there insane. They leave all hope behind who enter here. One certitude, while sane, they cannot leave. One anodyne for torture and despair. The certitude of death, which no reprieve can put off long, and which, divinely tender, but waits the outstretched hand to promptly render that draught whose slumber nothing can bereave. 2. Because he seemed to walk with an intent, I followed him, who, shadow-like and frail, unswervingly, though slowly, onward went, regardless, wrapped in thought as in a veil. Thus step for step with lonely sounding feet, we traveled many a long, dim, silent street. At length he paused, a black mass in the gloom, a tower that merged into the heavy sky, around the huddled stones of grave and tomb. Some old God's acre, now corruption's sty. He murmured to himself with dull despair, here faith died, poisoned by this charnel air. Then, turning to the right, went on once more, and travelled weary roads without suspense, and reached at last a low wall's open door, whose villa gleamed beyond the foliage dense. He gazed, and muttered with a hard despair, here love died, stabbed by its own worshipped pair. Then, turning to the right, resumed his march, and travelled streets and lanes with wondrous strength, until, on stooping through a narrow arch, we stood before a squalid house at length. He gazed, and whispered with a cold despair, here hope died, starved out in its utmost lair. When he had spoken thus, before he stirred, I spoke, perplexed by something in the signs of desolation I had seen and heard in this drear pilgrimage to ruined shrines. When faith and love and hope are dead indeed, can life still live? By what doth it proceed? As whom his one intense thought overpowers, he answered coldly, take a watch, erase the signs and figures of the circling hours, detach the hands, remove the dial face, the works proceed until run down, although bereft of purpose, void of use, still go. Then, turning to the right, paced on again, and traversed squares and travelled streets whose gloom seemed more and more familiar to my ken, and reached that sullen temple of the tombs, and paused to murmur with the old despair, here faith died, poisoned by this charnel air. I ceased to follow, for the knot of doubt was severed sharply with a cruel knife. He circled thus, forever tracing out the series of the fractions left of life, perpetual recurrence in the scope of but 3 terms, dead faith, dead love, dead hope. 3. Although lamps burn along the silent streets, even when moonlight silvers empty squares, the dark holds countless lanes and close retreats. But when the night its sphereless mantle wears, the open spaces yawn with gloom abysmal. The sombre mansions loom immense and dismal. The lanes are black as subterranean lairs. And soon the eye a strange new vision learns. The night remains for it as dark and dense, yet clearly in this darkness it discerns, as in the daylight with its natural sense, perceives a shade in shadow, not obscurely, pursues a stir of black in blackness surely, sees spectres also in the gloom intense. The air, too, with the silence vast and deep, becomes familiar, though unreconciled, hears breathings as of hidden life asleep, and muffled throbs as of pent passions wild. Far murmurs, speech of pity or derision, but all more dubious than the things of vision, so that it knows not when it is beguiled. No time abates the first despair and awe, but wonder ceases soon. The weirdest thing is felt least strange beneath the lawless law, where death in life is the eternal king, crushed impotent beneath this reign of terror, dazed with such mysteries of woe and error. The soul is too outworn for wondering. 4. He stood alone within the spacious square, declaiming from the central grassy mound, with head uncovered and with streaming hair, as if large multitudes were gathered round. A stalwart shape, the gestures full of might, the glances burning with unnatural light. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, all was black. In heaven, no single star, on earth, no track. A brooding hush, without a stir or note. The air so thick it clotted in my throat, and thus for hours. Then some enormous thing swooped past with savage cries and clinking wings, but I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, eyes of fire glared at me, throbbing with a starved desire. The hoarse and heavy and carnivorous breath was hot upon me from deep jaws of death. Sharp claws, swift talons, fleshless fingers cold, plucked at me from the bushes, tried to hold, but I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, lo, you there, that hillock burning with a brazen glare, those myriad dusky flames with points aglow, which writhed and hissed and darted to and fro, a Sabbath of the serpents, heaped pell-mell for devil's roll call and some fete of hell. Yet I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, meteors ran and crossed their javelins on the black sky span. The zenith opened to a gulf of flame. The dreadful thunderbolts jarred earth's fixed frame. The ground all heaved in waves of fire that surged and weltered round me, soul there unsubmerged. Yet I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, air once more, and I was close upon a wild seashore. Enormous cliffs arose on either hand. The deep tide thundered up a league broad strand. White foam belts seethed there. Wan spray swept and flew. The sky broke. Moon and stars and clouds and blue. And I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, on the left, the sun arose and crowned a broad crag cleft. There stopped and burned out black, except a rim, a bleeding, eyeless socket, red and dim, whereon the moon fell suddenly southwest, and stood above the right-hand cliffs at rest. Still I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, from the right, a shape came slowly with a ruddy light. A woman with a red lamp in her hand, bareheaded and barefooted on that strand. Oh, desolation, moving with such grace! Oh, anguish, with such beauty in thy face! I fell, as on my bier, hope travailed, with such fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, I was twain, two selves distinct that cannot join again. One stood apart, and knew, but could not stir, and watched the other stark in swoon, and her, and she came on, and never turned aside, between such sun and moon and roaring tide. And as she came more near, my soul grew mad with fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, hell is mild and piteous, matched with that accursed wild. A large black sign was on her breast that bowed. A broad black band ran down her snow-white shroud. That lamp she held was her own burning heart, whose blood drops trickled step by step apart. The mystery was clear. Mad rage had swallowed fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, by the sea, she knelt and bent above that senseless knee. Those lamp drops fell upon my white brow there. She tried to cleanse them with her tears and hair. She murmured words of pity, love, and woe. She heeded not the level rushing flow. And mad with rage and fear, I stood stone-bound, so near. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, when the tide swept up to her, there, kneeling by my side, she clasped that corpse like me, and they were borne away. And this vile me was left forlorn. I know the whole sea cannot quench that heart, or cleanse that brow, or wash those two apart. They love, their doom is drear, yet they nor hope nor fear. But I, what do I here? 5. How he arrives there, none can clearly know. Athwart the mountains and immense wild tracts, or flung a waif upon that vast sea flow, or down the river's boiling cataracts, to reach it is as dying fever-stricken. To leave it, slow, faint, birth-intense pangs quicken, and memory swoons in both the tragic acts. But being there, one feels a citizen. Escape seems hopeless to the heart forlorn. Can death in life be brought to life again? And yet, release does come. There comes a morn when he awakes from slumbering so sweetly that all the world is changed for him completely, and he is verily as if new-born. He scarcely can believe the blissful change. He weeps perchance, who wept not while accursed. Never again will he approach the range infected by what evil spell now burst. Poor wretch, who once hath paced that dolent city, shall pace it often, doomed beyond all pity, with horror ever deepening from the first. Though he possess sweet babes and loving wife, a home of peace by loyal friendships cheered, and love them more than death or happy life, they shall avail not. He must dree his weird. Renounce all blessings for that imprecation, steal forth and haunt that builded desolation of woe and terrors and thick darkness reared. 6. I sat forlornly by the riverside and watched the bridge lamps glow like golden stars above the blackness of the swelling tide, down which they struck rough gold in ruddier bars, and heard the heave and plashing of the flow against the wall a dozen feet below. Large elm trees stood along that river walk, and under one, a few steps from my seat, I heard strange voices join in stranger talk, although I had not heard approaching feet. These bodiless voices in my waking dream flowed dark words blending with the somber stream. And you have after all come back, come back. I was about to follow on your track, and you have failed. Our spark of hope is black. That I have failed is proved by my return. The spark is quenched, nor evermore will burn. But listen, and the story you shall learn. I reached the portal common spirits fear, and read the words above it, dark yet clear. Leave hope behind, all ye who enter here. And would have passed in, gratified to gain that positive eternity of pain, instead of this insufferable inane. A demon warder clutched me. Not so fast, first you leave your hopes behind. But years have passed, since I left all behind me to the last. You cannot count for hope with all your wit, this bleak despair that drives me to the pit. How could I seek to enter, void of it? He snarled, what thing is this which apes a soul, and would find entrance to our gulf of dole, without the payment of the settled toll? Outside the gate he showed an open chest. Here pay their entrance fees the souls unblessed. Cast in some hope, you enter with the rest. This is Pandora's box, whose lid shall shut, and Hellgate too, when hopes have filled it. But they are so thin that it will never glut. I stood a few steps backwards, desolate, and watched the spirits pass me to their fate, and fling off hope and enter at the gate. When one casts off a load, he springs upright, squares back his shoulders, breathes with all his might, and briskly paces forward, strong and light. But these, as if they took some burden, bowed. The whole frame sank. However strong and proud before, they crept in quite infirm and cowed. And as they passed me, earnestly from each a morsel of his hope I did beseech, to pay my entrance. But all mocked my speech. Not one would cede a little of his store, though knowing that in instance 3 or 4 he must resign the whole for evermore. So I returned. Our destiny is fell, for in this limbo we must ever dwell, shut out alike from heaven and earth and hell. The other sighed back. Yea, but if we grope with care through all this limbo's dreary scope, we yet may pick up some minute lost hope, and sharing it between us, entrance win. In spite of fiends so jealous for a gross sin, let us without delay our search begin. 7. Some say that phantoms haunt those shadowy streets, and mingle freely there with sparse mankind, and tell of ancient woes and black defeats, and murmur mysteries in the grave enshrined. But others think them visions of illusion, or even men gone far in self-confusion, no man there being wholly sane in mind. And yet a man who raves, however mad, who bears his heart and tells of his own fall, reserves some inmost secret, good or bad. The phantoms have no reticence at all. The nudity of flesh will blush, though tameless. The extreme nudity of bone grins shameless. The unsexed skeleton mocks shroud and pall. I have seen phantoms there that were as men, and men that were as phantoms flit in Rome. Marked shapes that were not living to my ken, caught breathings acrid as with Dead Sea foam. The city rests for man so weird and awful that his intrusion there might seem unlawful, and phantoms there may have their proper home. 8. While I still lingered on that river walk and watched the tide as black as our black doom, I heard another couple join in talk and saw them to the left hand in the gloom, seated against an elm bole on the ground, their eyes intent upon the stream profound. I never knew another man on earth, but had some joy and solace in his life, some chance of triumph in the dreadful strife. My doom has been unmitigated dearth. We gaze upon the river, and we note the various vessels, large and small, that float, ignoring every wrecked and sunken boat. And yet I asked no splendid dower, no spoil of sway or fame or rank or even wealth, but homely love with common food and health, and nightly sleep to balance daily toil. This all too humble soul would arrogate unto itself some signalizing hate from the supreme indifference of fate. Who is most wretched in this dolorous place? I think myself. Yet I would rather be my miserable self than he who formed such creatures to his own disgrace. The vilest thing must be less vile than thou, from whom it had its being, God and Lord, creator of all woe and sin abhorred, malignant and implacable. I vow that not for all thy power furled and unfurled, for all the temples to thy glory built, would I assume the ignominious guilt of having made such men in such a world. As if a being, god or fiend, could reign at once so wicked, foolish, and insane as to produce men when he might refrain. The world rolls round forever like a mill. It grinds out death and life and good and ill. It has no purpose, heart or mind or will. While air of space and time's full river flow, the mill must blindly whirl, unresting so. It may be wearing out, but who can know? Man might know one thing were his sight less dim, that it whirls not to suit his petty whim, that it is quite indifferent to him. Nay, does it treat him harshly, as he saith? It grinds him some slow years of bitter breath, then grinds him back into eternal death. 9. It is full strange to him who hears and feels, when wandering there in some deserted street, the booming and the jar of ponderous wheels, the trampling clash of heavy iron-shod feet. Who in this Venice of the Black Sea rideth? Who in this city of the stars abideth, to buy or sell as those in daylight sweet? The rolling thunder seems to fill the sky as it comes on. The horses snort and strain, the harness jingles as it passes by, the hugeness of an overburthened wain. A man sits nodding on the shaft, or trudges 3 parts asleep beside his fellow drudges, and so it rolls into the night again. What merchandise? Whence, whither, and for whom? Perchance it is a fate-appointed hearse, bearing away to some mysterious tomb, or limbo of the scornful universe. The joy, the peace, the life-hope, the abortions of all things good, which should have been our portions, but have been strangled by that city's curse. 10. The mansion stood apart in its own ground. In front thereof a fragrant garden lawn, high trees about it, and the whole walled round. The massy iron gates were both withdrawn, and every window of its front shed light, portentous in that city of the night. But though thus lighted, it was deadly still, as all the countless bulks of solid gloom. Perchance a congregation to fulfill solemnities of silence in this doom? Mysterious rites of dolor and despair, permitting not a breath of chant or prayer. Broad steps ascended to a terrace broad, whereon lay still light from the open door. The hall was noble, and its aspect odd, hung round with heavy black from dome to floor, and ample stairways rose to left and right, whose balustrades were also draped with night. I paced from room to room, from hall to hall, nor any life throughout the maze discerned, but each was hung with its funereal pall, and held a shrine around which tapers burned, with picture or with statue or with bust, all copied from the same fair form of dust. A woman, very young and very fair, beloved by bounteous life and joy and youth, and loving these sweet lovers, so that care and age and death seemed not for her in sooth. Alike as stars, all beautiful and bright, these shapes lit up that mausolean night. At length I heard a murmur as of lips, and reached an open oratory, hung with heaviest blackness of the whole eclipse. Beneath the dome a fuming censer swung, and one lay there upon a low white bed, with tapers burning at the foot and head. The lady of the images, supine, death still, life sweet, with folded palms she lay, and kneeling there, as at a sacred shrine, a young man, wan and worn, who seemed to pray. A crucifix of dim and ghostly white surmounted the large altar left in night. The chambers of the mansion of my heart, in every one whereof thine image dwells, are black with grief eternal for thy sake. The inmost oratory of my soul, wherein thou ever dwellest quick or dead, is black with grief eternal for thy sake. I kneel beside thee, and I clasp the cross, with eyes forever fixed upon that face, so beautiful and dreadful in its calm. I kneel here patient as thou liest there, as patient as a statue carved in stone, of adoration and eternal grief. While thou dost not awake, I cannot move, and something tells me thou wilt never wake, and I alive feel turning into stone. Most beautiful were death to end my grief, most hateful to destroy the sight of thee, dear vision better than all death or life. But I renounce all choice of life or death, for either shall be ever at thy side, and thus in bliss or woe be ever well. He murmured thus, and thus in monotone, intent upon that uncorrupted face, entranced except his moving lips alone, I glided with hushed footsteps from the place. This was the festival that filled with light. that palace in the city of the night. End of section 1.